Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another episode of Chasing Better with Noxie. It is your host, Guy Smiley. You'll never find me not grinning most days, as you know. So today we have a very special guest. I have come into contact with this amazing human in the last couple of years through family members of mine. Shout out to Auntie Gwen. She's the artsy auntie. So that's my dad's sister, by the way, for those playing at home. She has been a circus teacher, all that sort of stuff, and started doing a family history. So started looking into our Irish heritage, Scottish heritage, and all that sort of stuff. And then actually found that our guest today was involved through our family down the track at some stage, which is very exciting for me as a young guy a couple of years back to find that out. So this lady has had some amazing credentials and is still obviously kicking goals every day. And her story of better and how she inspires others around her now is fantastic. Hence why I wanted to ask her very nicely to offer her time today. It is none other than Miss Nova Peris. She is a former Olympian and she has done politics. She now runs her own foundation. And just watching this lady on social media is fantastic because she is a mum of kids. Her own kids are actually absolutely crushing it now. And we'll dive into that as well. So Nova, thanks for your time today. And how's your day been?
Yeah, thanks Andrew for having me, or do I call you uncle or cousin or something?
Whatever's fine. Yeah, that's cool. Noxie if you want. Most people don't even know me as Andrew.
But all good. So we do have that bloodline there through my great grandfather, your grandfather, but that's and maybe we can talk a bit about Kokoda a bit later on and the reason for me wanting to do that. But yeah, I'm always thrilled and honored to be able to share my story, and even just myself watching what you've been able to achieve throughout your own journey. And I guess for myself every day, I know I went to the markets today, and this Aboriginal fella from a little place called Barunga, which is 500-600 kilometers away, he's like, "Oh my God, you know Nova Peris?" I'm like, "Yes, I've been reading about you in the newspaper. I see you on TV." And he's, "Oh, I can't believe it. I think I'm going to faint." And I'm like, so it's amazing to know that people, it's been 23 years since the Sydney Olympics. And then I went into Parliament and had a couple of kids, and I've got a grandson in between. But I'm really well aware that for someone who still has a very high profile, that you have to look after your health and your well-being. And it's important to, I guess, continue on and, continue to inspire the next generation. There's so much information with technology, and which can cause anxiety and depression because of, trying to keep up with people and keeping up with what's real and, not what's not real. So I'm very aware of the profile that I have. So I try to use it in a positive way and give my time when I can, and just, live a very positive, healthy life. Because a lot of our mob, being an Aboriginal person, I went to about 3 or 4 funerals last year where people had died in their early 50s. And I'm 52 in 2 weeks' time. For you to say, "How's your morning been?" I got up this morning, 7 a.m. and went off to the gym and just try and live a healthy, positive life, and try and share my stories as best I can.
Awesome. That is fantastic. And I think the great thing is you open your mouth and you already started talking about other cool stuff like Kokoda and that. So like just getting you talking is inspiring as it is, right? So I think a really cool thing is obviously you've had that Olympic background, and I definitely got starstruck. I was actually catching up with some mates that had flown down from Broome last night because I'm in Perth. And I was actually just blown away because they're like, "What have you been up to, man?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm interviewing an Olympian tomorrow." And they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, so long story, blah, 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 blah," explain the whole connection. And then the starstruck moment was when you actually passed me your email yesterday, and it was actually like at olympian.org or whatever. And I was like, "Holy crap, like that's really cool." So like, I think that was, it's, you're now leaving a footprint, so to speak, I think, which is very powerful. And I've definitely seen people in places of influence, so to speak, in the world of social media that can often leave a bad footprint without realizing it, because they have so many eyes on them, which is something to be aware of, I think, for all of us. And that's where, like, I've been a big advocate of things like, Are You Okay Day and stuff like that. But I personally try to take that message from that day and remind people more times throughout the year. So I don't think that like a message like that should just be a once a year thing, which is I believe that to be true. But again, like, we all have that ability to inspire better in others, and like you said, like, you literally just went to the markets, and it wasn't necessarily a photo op or anything like that, or a rush of 30 people, but it was just one guy had that moment of greatness. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, so well done on that. I think that's very, very good. So diving back into, like, you as a kid, like, obviously you've got a big sporting background, you've then moved into politics and stuff like that as you've matured and aged and stuff like that. So, like, was sport always a big thing for you growing up? Like, were you an academic as well, or a bit of both, or what do you think?
Yeah, mum and my aunties and uncles played hockey. So from the time I could walk, I had a hockey stick in my hand.
Okay.
So that was, so that was a natural thing. And all my uncles played football, and mum played rep soccer for the NT. So, and she had a remarkable life, like mum was part of the stolen generation and lived on she got sent to the Tiwi Islands with 3 of her siblings where she lived. And then she got fostered out to a foster family in Adelaide, where she lived for about 5 or 6 years. And, I sort of think that my ability to have so much optimism in life came from her. She was always, she was never a prisoner of the past, never a prisoner of circumstance. She was always, I'm alive and I'm well, and I'm going to do something with it. And I sort of feel that sports, and when she came back from Adelaide, even though we lived in housing commission, for me, people often ask, how did you do what you did? And I said, well, I had a roof over my head. I had a loving family, Nana and Granddad were always there. But I went to school. I had a profound love of school. And up here in Darwin, because it's a large population of Aboriginal and multicultural people, racism was really nothing for it. Okay. I never experienced that as a kid growing up. So that wasn't a barrier, but Darwin was always very sporty. And it's funny because my Italian godmother, Cesarina Gonzardi, she could see how fast I could run, whether it was me running away from my mum, if I was in trouble, had to jump the fence. And she was like, Johnny, Nova can run. Let me take her to athletics. So she took me to athletics when I was 5 years old.
Yep.
So it was my Italian godmother that got me into athletics, and I never looked back. And I broke records all the time and bloody just won races. And it was, that there was actually a pitch, and I'll share this with you, of me when I was 9 years old, and I was at the Northern Territory Athletics Championships, and I'd broken 5 NT records and had 5 gold medals.
Yeah, right.
And the headlines was, Nova Peris, can she bring home gold for Australia in the Territory? And I was like 9 years old.
Yeah, right.
I was like, no pressure on a 9-year-old kid growing up in Darwin.
Yeah.
But so I guess from a young age, I was destined for something. I had all this incredible sporting talent. But I think, you ask a question whether I was academic. I was quite good at school. My old high school, Dripstone High School, the gymnasium's called the Nova Peris Gymnasium. And I left there with a certificate of excellence. I got, I don't know, out of a possible 15 A's, I got like 14 A's and 1 B plus. So I was a pretty good student. I sort of felt that my stepfather, who had a big impact on my life, Chappie, he served twice in Vietnam in the Navy, and he was a copper growing up as a copper. So for me, as a kid growing up, I couldn't get away with much because I had his eyes and ears of all these bloody mates, So I grew up with a lot of discipline. And So I sort of, the life that I went into, I sort of had that at home in terms of the profound love of sports, the profound love of education. I had the discipline, and I had all these sorts of things. I had the optimism, and I dreamt big, from that time when I was 9 years old watching the 1980 Moscow Olympics. And I said to Mum, I wanted to go to the Olympics. And she was like, well, you better start training. So from that very young age, I had all the things that put me on a pathway where if I wanted something, no one was going to hand it to me. I had to just work bloody hard for it and make the most of opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So do you find through that discipline, you actually learnt that it was all about the process and not really the outcome? Like the outcome was something to work towards, but you actually just fell in love with just showing up to training every day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I sort of feel sometimes people want the view at the top of the mountain without realizing you can't get to the top of the mountain without a single step. So it's one step after the other. It's a process. And, even like now with the foundation that I have, it's been long and it's hard, and it's just, you're dealing with government bureaucrats where you don't have control over them, and it's just a grind. And even my husband says, he's like, shit, you just never give up. And I was thinking, why don't I give up? And I said, even like when I won my hockey gold in 96, I was thinking about my athletics goals. Okay. So it wasn't like I celebrated, and don't get me wrong, bloody hell, the Hockey-Roo girls, we were just mad as a cut snake, and we just celebrated. But then it was like, okay, I still could have kept playing in hockey. I retired in 97 internationals and could have gone to the Sydney Olympics in hockey, but I wanted to run, and that was my first childhood dream. And so effectively I was on the top of the mountain, and I could have stayed there, but I thought, nah, stuff this, I'm going to start all over again. Yeah. So in terms of what you're saying, like the challenge and the process, it is a grind. And in the sport of track and field, like, you could train your ass off, in 100 meters or 200 meters every day on the grind. You're thinking about writing your goals down, your weights and your track and your sacrifices, and you get up every day and it's constantly on the grind, and you're doing this just to improve 1 meter. Yeah. And so for me to have the life I live now, I can do it because I understood what it took all those years ago. And I had people like Rick Charlesworth, yourself being a Western Australian, and he was the master of perfection, the one percenters, and for
can you
him,
think of just about it? Can you think of any of the one percenters that he would like get you to focus on instead of like outcomes? Like, even if it was just small adjustments to diet or anything like that?
Well, diet was everything. And Rick was just ruthless, because there was no point in training to get an outcome and waking up at 5 a.m. to get to a 6 a.m. session where you're practicing your individual skills and your team set plays. If you can't look after your body, if you want to have the Mercedes Benz or a Porsche or a Ferrari, you got to put the good fuel in. You can't put the fuel in. Yeah. And so, even for us, diet was paramount, and elite sport isn't sexy. And it's interesting now where you hear a lot of sports, it's the body shaming, and there should be better ways of being able to say. I come from the old school where it's like, I'm a fan of David Goggins as well. Listen to his stuff, and he's just straight up. He said, you just got to lose the weight. If you want this outcome, you got to be a better version of yourself, or you got to be the best that you can be and apply all those one percenters. And it's like going back to, if I can remember something so well, in 1996, which was in February of 1996. So the Olympics started July the 19th, 1996. And Rick said to us in February, he said, don't let July 19 come around and you start looking for excuses as to why you can't be at your ultimate best. And that was your mental preparation, your physical preparation, or the external forces like your family, because your family just humbugged the shit out of you. You're going to the Olympics. Oh, can I have a t-shirt? Can I have your tracksuit? Can I have your shoes? Can I have this? I'm like, you know, so all that, because you have to be. And when you get to the top, it's all mindset. Everything is mindset. You train, you become a creature of habit. And so getting back to even like yourself, and I see a lot of the stuff that you put up, it's habits. Habits will make you, or habits will break you.
Damn straight. That's cool. It's yeah, I mean, this is a powerful conversation to have, considering my gym members this morning. We've just run our usual strength testing session, and there were a couple of the young chicks in there that have been training for about 6 to 12 months now, and like been getting some really good progress. And one of the girls, Jules, was just like destroying herself today, and you could tell because she'd walked in and she said, I want to deadlift 100 kilos today. I've done 87 previously and I want to really fucking go hard. And I said, sweet. First thing, rock up and you're going to do it. Second thing, make sure you eat. I said, you have to have fuel in your body if you want to fucking go all out today. She's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, it'll feel weird because I know that you don't normally eat until, an hour or so later generally. And the great thing is she went and hit 90 kilos and it was smooth as hell. But then her brain kicked in on 95. So, and you could see, like I can see straight off. As soon as you're standing right in front of someone, you can see when their brain has gone, nope, not today. And that fear response is kicked in, or the I'm not good enough, or the whatever. So the great thing is I pulled her aside because you could see as soon as like body language speaks volumes, right? And for her, she just was like, oh, but I said, what have you learned from today? And she said, oh, I couldn't lift 100. I was like, and I'm like, cool, that's fine, but it's still a target we can aim for. You've just gone and hit 90 with this, which is still a best for you. The great thing is you now need to realize, what was your preparation like for the last 5 weeks? And she was like, oh, well, I've trained probably hard for the last 2 weeks. I had some interruption because she works at a school. So obviously going back to school for the start of the year. And I said, how's your food been? And she goes, oh, it's only really been good since I've been back training. And I said, fantastic. Adia, one of our other girls, went and smashed 100, 105, no worries. She's been working on that. And I said, what did you see different in her preparation? And she goes, oh, she's just strong as hell. And I'm like, no. I said, if you actually are aware of the fact that Adia for the last 5 weeks has done 4 to 5 sessions a week, she's trained the house down, her food's been good, her sleep's been pretty decent, and she's still going to work. She's been, little wins all the way along. I said, can you see a difference in the habits there? And she said, oh, okay. And I said, always when we fall down, always look for, okay, what can I improve? Why did I fall down? And how can I go forward next time? Because otherwise you'll just keep falling down the same spot, right? Yeah. And I think that's something you would have obviously dealt with a lot, because obviously, like you said, you're sometimes looking to just shave a second off, especially with running, right? Or microseconds or like fragments of seconds. So it's like you're talking in small little outcomes that can actually mean massive amounts of workload to get there,
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know if you get your your gym clients or the people who you mentor and train, is to write shit down in diaries. I was just a big fan always. I've actually got diaries from all my sporting career, from 94, 95, 96. I can go back and it'll say what I ate for breakfast that day, how I felt before training. I was so, what's the word, meticulous? When I was getting my body right for the Sydney Olympics, that I had to have X amount of fat and protein. And Scott's reading my diary, he's like, you've written here that you had a tablespoon of peanut butter. So you know what? To get that, the small things to improve, you have to do all the other small things. And it's interesting, like you say, but the little by little. So in hockey, our Olympic motto was a poco, which is Spanish for little by little. So little by little you're going to achieve big things.
Yeah.
But and the mindset is, like you said, you asked her to go back and look at the preparation. You're not going to get the outcome you want if you haven't stayed on target and tune, and writing those small things down. And, like, even you might wake up and think, oh, geez, I hit a PB, then you reflect on the night before, oh yeah, shit, I had 8 hours of sleep. I had a good meal the night before. I read a book, or I didn't touch my social media, just things like this. Because like I said, when you get to game day, it's all mental, and the mind can play games with you. And I tell my kids, and I often say this as, to when I do a lot of my public speaking, is if you say you can, or if you say you can't, either way you're right. So you say you can, say you can't, either way you're right. So you just got to be positive, the positive mindset. And you're right. And having a diary, I can't emphasize that enough for people as to, how you felt that day. What did you achieve? What didn't you achieve? And the why, and then how to, because that acts as your go-to.
And I find the other powerful thing with writing stuff down is you actually get it just out of your head. Like any bad thoughts, it's like, cool, write them down, because all of a sudden, because you've put it on paper, it's no longer in here, and you can get on with your day. It's like, cool, didn't hit 100, but what's the positive from that? It's like, cool. So wrote down, didn't hit 100, sweet. Definitely hit 90, so it's still a PB, so fucking pat on the back, well done. And then it's like, cool, how do I improve on next time? Okay, well, I know my prep needs to be better. I know that this needs to be more consistent, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, you've got a positive from a negative, right? So it's always looking at that, and you can approach that everything. And the big message I put to the guys this morning after the session, I was like, everyone's won here today. There were a couple of people like Jules, and I pointed it out. I said, Jules was fucking dark and stormy on herself. And I said, this is what we went through. And then once you realize that moment had to happen for her to realize, okay, cool, my prep needs to be better. I need to be more consistent. I need to write some shit down, whatever. Everyone in the room was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? And it's like, again, it has to be part of the process. There has to be failures, because I can guarantee you there were failures along the way for you. That you were like, shit, how do I make this better? And
I think it's part of life. And for Jules, it's not the end of the world, but for her, it's, oh shit, it's an opportunity for her to reevaluate stuff, and that's part of life. We as human beings, we're all faulty creatures. We've all stuffed up, along the way, and sometimes people refuse to learn or don't accept their mishaps. And that's, for me, some of the biggest lessons in life is because of stuff ups or failures. Like, oh my God, that's so true. And the good thing about that is you'll never do it again. If you're fair income about, bettering yourself, you won't. So it's not so much a failure. It's, oh shit, you need to reflect upon that incident to ensure that you never do it again. And, it's being able to better yourself each time.
Fantastic. So kicking it up a gear. So we've gone through the athlete Nova. How do you find this kind of led into, running a foundation, doing the whole politics side of things? Like what sort of was the transition like there? Did you treat it the same? Like, you still had outcomes to obviously try and attain, but then you also were like, cool, what's the process that I need to follow to get me there? Like, was it a big switch? Like, did you find it was a struggle, or was it something you could just kind of, all right, sweet, this is my lane now? Like, how did you go there?
Yeah, I sort of feel like I was saying, at school, I was quite academic. People who knew me sort of felt, oh, she's going to be a politician one day, because I could articulate myself. And, I never just walked past bullshit. I was one for always, the saying is, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So I was always, and I had a lot of empathy. So even like at school, I remember I used to do a lot of stuff in primary school with our special ed unit, kids who, had other disabilities. I hate the word disabilities, but, I would always find myself helping people. So I sort of grew up with a lot of empathy, and I think my nana had a lot to do with that. She always made sure that I was thinking that way, and because she had a hard time sort of growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But in sports, because I went through that era of the 1990s with, your Michael Longs of the world and, your Gilbert McAdams and your Nikki Winmars. And so there was an era of coming through in the lead up to the Olympics where people were talking about racism. Aboriginal affairs was sort of, what's Australia going to do with the Sydney Olympics? So I found myself every time I achieved, I'd come back with won a world top, championships with hockey or Champions Trophy. It wasn't just, how you going over? Great. You had a great tournament. I found myself always being asked about Aboriginal affairs.
Yeah.
So in sports, I think that's how the transition is because I was always speaking about it during my sporting career. And as sports, it's a platform. So you can project stuff and you know yourself that some of the greatest civil rights movements have sort of come via sports and people using that as a platform. So
did you feel like a leader at the time? Or you had the potential to lead to better?
I never really thought about that word leadership. Like I'd captained Australia a few times but I never felt, maybe because I was just too young and didn't want the title of leader. But even like looking back to when I was in my 20s, I was a delegate to the Constitution Convention for Australia to become a republic. So that was in 1998. So I was a sweet-faced 27-year-old. Even before I went and won Commonwealth Games gold, I was there at Parliament House battling it out, should Australia become a republic? So I was in that space during my athletics career. So finishing up sports, having 2 more kids, I then got asked in 2004, would I go into politics? And I knocked it back because I felt that I hadn't done enough community stuff. And I just didn't want to be this ex-sports person going into Parliament. So then I did a lot of work for the federal government as a consultant, traveled to 104 communities around Australia, promoting health and well-being and health checks for chronic diseases, all that sort of stuff. And then went and lived in Broome for a while and worked for the Land Council there. And so I was sort of saw myself in positions where you could make a difference on the ground. And then I came back to Darwin and then I set up an academy like the Clontarf Foundation, but for Aboriginal girls at my old high school. And then next minute, I'm getting tapped on the shoulder by bloody Julia Gillard. Nova, like to go into Parliament. And I had literally 2 weeks to make that decision.
Yeah, right. So that's a big shift, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it was. And that was when the whole, oh my God, 2 weeks. And that's when the Post-it notes came out again. I had all the Post-it notes of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. It was like, Nelson Mandela. People had gone before as a Black person entering the Australian Parliament or any sort of political world. And then I said, yes. And then me as a Cyclone Tracy Category 5 survivor at the age of 4, when I said yes and when it was announced, I was like, it was a 9-month campaign and I felt like every day I was in like a Category 6. It was like, oh my God, what have I done? But, I look at the fact now that I was the first Aboriginal woman in federal Parliament then in 2013, and now there's 9 Aboriginal women in Parliament. So you break that glass ceiling and your floodgates open, and it was incredible, hard, tiring time being a mother, a grandmother. I had death threats, the racism was rife. 3-4 times a week, just shit was just thrown. I'm like, I didn't sign up for this shit. I just signed up to be a politician. Yeah. It's a horrible world at times and it can be very toxic, but I think my background in sports helped me because, what I did learn in sports is about controlling the controllables.
Mhm.
And I could only control the things that I had control of. I had no control over the opinions of others, what was going on. They're all external forces, so I couldn't allow my head mentally to get involved in shit that I couldn't control. I just had to do the things that I could and just continue to be positive and be the best person I could be in the Australian Parliament. So and do my work. It was certainly tough, and you know, I left Parliament for family. I had a lot of other things that was sort of, and I thought, well, one term in this place in the White House was enough for me, and hence that sort of the space that I'm in now. I'm still in a place where I can have a huge impact on the lives of the people who I want to serve. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
So I suppose in finishing, because we've got a couple of minutes, how do you feel moving forward you're able to impact those around you? Now, I know your son is obviously killing it with the Saints at the moment over in Melbourne, which is very cool. Do you feel you're able to have a direct impact on his ability, or have you kind of let him do his own thing and he's found his way? Like, do you find you've kind of led him towards that kind of disciplined lifestyle of, you know, focusing on the little things each day and to get better?
Yeah, like I coached Jack. And he, before he went into the AFL, got drafted, he'd won 7 titles in athletics, over the 1, the 2, and the 4. And, you know, should have gone to World Juniors, but COVID hit in 2020. And football wasn't his first love. It was athletics. But then he was like, I'm going to give football a crack, Mum. I said, well, do it. And he's re-signed with Saints, and hopefully gets a debut this year. But going back to Jack, from the time he was 11 years old, where when he was 10, he came last in his heat, and he's like, I never want to come last again, Mum. I was like, right, son, you never want to come last again. You got to just train, son, and listen to your mother. I've been down the path. I've reached the destination of where you want to go, son. So he was so coachable. I was blessed to have, you know, obviously he's my own son. He's got outstanding genetics there, but it's funny. He always says, because even his high school mates just say, "Oh, you've only won that because of you've got good DNA."
Yeah.
And Jack's like, "Mum, they don't get it that I train my fucking ass off." And I said, "Son, talking to your coach here, I know you train." And there'll be days when it's, you know, it was 5 degrees and hailing. I'd say, fucking get out there and train, Jack. And he just like, I said, I'm not fucking around with you. Just get out and you train, son. So he listened to me, and he got the results. And even in football now, we know with his coach, Ross Lyon, you know, he's got, you know, his head's out there, and he's signed up. He needs to get the Saints to another level. So there's pressure on him. And I said to Jack, you know, it's a pressure cooker. You're playing elite sport, and your members, everyone wants an outcome. But Jack has been in that environment since he was 11, 12 years old, of looking after your body, going to train, you wake up. But there's also life after sports, and, you know, he's doing uni as well, which is important, because everyone needs a fallback. They always need a plan B, and that's the plan B will be his lifetime, you know, where he goes with his uni. But, you know, absolutely, he's the only kid that's ever listened to me. I have 3.
1 out of 3 is not bad.
You know, I coached hockey in 2021 or 22, whenever it was, and never coached before. And Destiny played, my middle daughter, for the NT, and we won a bronze medal. It was the first time the NT's ever finished past 6th position. Finished higher than the 6th position, and I coached them. So, and then I retired. I was like, no, that's it. Always just, you know, finishing on a nice high. But yeah, it's funny, because all the knowledge that I have, Andrew, with hockey and athletics, I've never been able to share that with, I don't coach. The only person I've coached is my son, and now he's football. I don't coach anymore. hockey, I had a game last week, and I can still run around and play a bit of hockey. You know, at my ripole age of nearly 52, I'm still playing freaking A grade. Gives me the shits because I'm like, I just want to play fun. I'm like, Nova, no, you just can't play fun anymore.
Yeah. No, that's understandable.
So,
Very cool. Oh, that's cool, man. And yeah, I suppose in closing, like the biggest thing for me is to see you've come from small beginnings to, you know, you've pretty much achieved all you possibly could in both athletics and hockey, which is fantastic. You know, you've done the politics side of things, so you're now influencing and hopefully changing a lot of stuff for better, which is really cool. I think that's like, if any athlete on the planet could do that, or every athlete could do that, like that's fantastic. And I think like going forward, obviously you've now had that impact on your kids. You've definitely inspired me, and I've only had 40 minutes of your time today. But we'll definitely have to do some more of these, I think, and dive into other topics if we can. That would be fantastic. But in closing, I'd like to say thanks for jumping on. And yeah, I'll drop all of your social links and all that sort of stuff so the guys can come and check out your foundation and everything. And thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, come back and we'll talk Kokoda next time, and that'll be amazing.
Fantastic.
That was a real, yeah. Awesome.